Okay. This meeting of the Judicial and Public Safety Strategic Planning and Technology Commission is called to order at 4:09 p.m. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Ferrero,
Present.
Berman, Conant. Thank you. Felton,
Here.
Villa, Molina. Miss Molina. I see that she is on though. Mosser. Pirog. Wallers.
Here.
Keel.
Here.
Rocca's here. We do not have a quorum yet. We are one short. Ms. Conant is on her way. I am going to skip over the remote attendance request because we don't have a quorum to address it, as well as passing the approval of the minutes. There is no sign up for public comment and there is no one in the room for public comment. In terms of partners, we do have a partner that is here today. Lisa Ost from Court Services, the Executive Director, is present. Thank you for attending, Ms. Ost. And I think we're going to skip right to presentations and announcements because we don't need a quorum to address anything there. Any presentations or announcements?
So, Madam Chair, this is Roger Fonstock with IT and Building Management. Just a few things for announcements. As many of you know, Bob Enright, who was the project manager for many years for the court case management project, he retired this past month. And Charles Lasky, who's responsible for the IT department, he's been working with our applications development and project management team to reassign the work from Bob Enright and to make sure that we're following through to make sure we're not missing any of the needs of the people using the system or looking for project services. I don't know, Charles, if you want to talk about who's in the channel to replace Bob for right now.
Hi, this is Charles Lask with the IT department. Yeah, as Roger mentioned, Bob was with us for many years. And so right now we have Dave, who's one of our lead sysadmins that is assisting with managing the projects. We have Gary Pokerney, who is one of our project managers that's picking up things and joining meetings. And we're working on reassigning somebody to fill that role, so there'll be a dedicated person. That's still in process. It's going to take a little while to get that worked out. I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks that'll be worked out. But we also have Davis and our applications group stepping up to take on more things, and then I'm filling in as needed. So things are covered, but we do want to get that filled so we have a dedicated person that is spending their time on the needs of this group.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other presentations?
No, we have the budget, and I think that we'll reserve our comments for that. I'm not sure if we have any current pending upgrades right now. I think we're kind of in the in-between stages, some patches and updates, but we're not doing a major upgrade right now. We finished one a year ago. It's about a year ago.
Okay, well,
so they'll be coming soon.
I think that we could probably at least start the budget report.
Sure.
And make sure then that there is a sufficient opportunity for Ms. Conant
Sure.
when she gets here, which I am sure is going to be soon. Okay. So are you going to make that, Mr. Fonstock?
Yes. Blair, could you? Yeah, you got the right. So in the packet, we sent out a budget worksheet, and Blair is displaying a budget worksheet. There's two versions of this. One, there's a stapled packet that we passed out. That was what was sent in your email, and then there's individual sheets. So there should be 3 individual sheets that you have. One says budget report for 127 fund. Yeah, here, you want to give them that? That's cool. Yeah. One says budget report 127 fund. That's the worksheet for the submitted budget. And then the other two single sheets, one of them are the budget transactions for the operating budget. And the other one is the budget transaction for positions. So what we have in this report, the first report, which is the budget report 127 fund, it goes through and shows you the 2023 amended budget, the 2023 actual, the 2024 amended, 2024 actual, 2025 amended. We have 2025 actual to date. So we're about 7 months in. And then we have the submitted budget. And then the last column is the percent difference from 25 to 26. So in the current proposed budget for 2026, if you look at the submitted, you'll see 352,893, and that's for salaries and wages. And then that's a net increase over the 326,726 that was in there. It's about $26,000 different for right now. We're looking at still some additional changes, but I don't think you'll see it go any higher than that. That's where we're at. As you draw down, you'll see some of the, there is no overtime budget for 2026. I don't know that we have any hourly that would get overtime, but then you have the contributions for benefits and healthcare through workers' compensation. You pick up at 5150, and we held the same number for contractual consulting services. So it's 260,000 in 2025 amended and 260,000 in the submitted budget. That's for additional either software support, contractual services, things that we need to do to maintain and upgrade the products that we have. This goes beyond just the Tyler services. It's support that helps us with integrations with services that we use in addition to Tyler. So that could include things like Echo. It could include whether we use it for any type of document management, those types of things. The software license cost, there are, we went from 1,124,000 to 1,900 or 1,197,000. That's a 6% increase. And if you flip over to the backside of this report, there's liability, unemployment. There's a budget for conference and meetings where we have a budget to send people to the Tyler conference. And we also support a person from each department to go to that. We kept that. I think it's still important for us to always have good product information, especially with Tyler. We have a lot of different products that we own. We own, I think, 3 or 4 products now. So understanding how they're progressing and integrating, that's where we find that information out as a group. I think it's important to keep that. And then there's line items for transfers to general fund. I believe the transfer to general fund, the 8709. Charles, do you know, is that support? Okay, that's administrative overhead for support. It's like the help desk and service desk.
I'm sorry, that's the service desk you said?
Yep. We've general support for everything that we have through the rest of the IT department, not the individually named people, but we run service desk and support for the people that are actually in the budget. So you have, what is it? I got it on the other sheet. We'll go to the other sheets real quick. If you want to, well, we'll go for the total first. I'm sorry. So the total for the year, it goes from 2025 amended was 1,877,962. And then submitted was 1,972,218. The net difference is 5%.
And is Judy Braca here, is that accounted for by the increase in the software licensing cost? Is that the principal?
There's a
basis?
small amount, like 26,000 that's in the people, and the rest of it is all in software license cost. So that's where you get the understanding from the next 2 sheets. So if you look at the transaction report, one of them, top right corner says report by transactions, and the other one says report by positions. And the report by transactions, if you look at that sheet, page 1 of 1, it shows you all the software that we are paying for in this budget. So there's the contractual services at 260, and then you'll see the list of what we have budgeted for all of the different software. And you will see the largest ticket item is Tyler maintenance contract at 552. That's the main court case management system. The other packages on here are supporting software that we use for different offices and departments. There's Axon software for state's attorney and public defender's office. We have DocuSign in there for digital signatures, electronic signature. We do some other work for interfaces and the compliance. Compliance is essentially like our write once, read many storage appliance, so we can store things that we don't have to worry about anybody overwriting. There's, the load balancer is in there. We also have the success account manager, which is included in that. They work with us on the product and the services that we get from Tyler. And then there's also a client solutions consultant that I believe, Charles, is for integrations and working between the products. So one is specific more to supporting the product we own. The other one's more the client solution in between the products. And I think that's the client solutions consultant is new for this year. So we're adding that. That was something that we thought could be helpful in getting some of the integrations that we need. But those are the 1.2 million almost in software licensing costs. And again, the products that you're seeing on here are largely deployed and in use and being upgraded and maintained. This is maintaining them. We are not specifically adding anything to the Tyler court system. I believe the client solution consultant is new and Axon. There's some new Axon licensing, Charles. And Charles probably knows that part better than I do, but I think that's most of what I see new.
Excuse me, if I
Go ahead.
if it could just be reflected that Ms. Conant has now appeared.
Hey.
Ms. Conant, we understand you were held up in court.
Yes, Judge, sorry.
Ms. Oz, do we have an extra packet for her?
Sure. Absolutely.
There's a little bit of an update, Ms. Conant. And it should be noted now that we are at quorum. Ms. Conant, we proceeded on the budget explanations. Started. And as Ms. Conan is being seated, I am going to ask if we could see if Ms. Molina is online. Ms. Molina, are you online?
Yes, I am, Chair.
All right, thank you. Then I'm actually going to jump
Okay.
back for a second to remote attendance requests as Ms. Molina is making the request to attend remotely. Is there any objection to Ms. Molina attending remotely? Hearing none from any of the commission members, that permission is granted. Then we could proceed because then
Okay.
Ms. Molina then can be in the question phase
Sure.
as well.
So just real quickly, we went through the budget report for the 127 fund. Blair, if you could pull that back up for Ms. Molina, she can see that again. We'll start over a little bit just to recap. Again, the salary and wages went up by $26,000 for the support staff that supports the court technology. And then we discussed briefly and the contractual consulting stayed flat, 260,000 to 260,000 year over year. And then the software licensing cost went up 6%, which is about $73,000. And that was primarily Axon and the client support solutions consultant. And then overall, we have a budget proposed that is a 5% increase. So it went from 1.8 million to 1.9, but it's about 5%. So we're going through the budget transaction report for transactions, and we were talking about the different software that's in the report. And primarily the difference in the software line item was the client solutions consultant and Axon software. I think that summarized what was in the transactions for difference. All the rest of the software, as I said, was implemented and is in support. So we're doing the maintenance and upgrades as required with the offices and departments.
Axon is what again?
That is the software for working with the body cameras and in-car camera solutions. It does the management of the evidence. It does redaction, annotation, storage. They manage the actual storage of the videos with the state's attorney and public defender. And there's discovery and some other features where they can share the data. So
I can add to that for just a minute if you want. Chair.
Chief Judge Villa?
One of the things about this program is it allows for direct access for the public defender's office, which is why there's probably a separate line item, I would imagine, Roger.
yes,
State attorney's office. There are additional fees that might be owed by firms that want to have a subscription for this kind of service, outside firms. This coincides with a change we made to our local rule where no subpoena returns come back to judges. That subpoena returns, like in the civil practice, go right back to the practitioner who's requested it in our exchange between the parties in discovery. And that is because we were getting inundated with links and videos in our administrative board of our office to organize that and contact people and make sure they were getting the complaints if links did not work. So this has been a really big change, I think, for the parties' benefit in particular, because they're working directly with the video evidence itself and not through our office.
we're on the position. Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry. I was talking to Charles, just checking my facts. Okay, yeah, I reran it, so they should be, this doesn't look right. I don't know. Okay. It came out different. Okay. The other report that you had is the positions, and we were just conferring whether or not the positions was part of what changed today. And the position report, there's a small change that if you look at the top section of the table where it shows 321,977, there's actually additional expenses in there for no, there's the payroll accrual, and what was the other part, Charles?
There's one change in one of the positions. It previously was so I just gave you my sheet.
One was a
It was
desktop
a
support
desktop-
analyst.
Right, and now it is a system administrator lead, the person that's doing a lot of the work on the servers for the updates and maintaining that. So that's the change there. We made that change, and that was about a $26,000 change. Overall, I believe that that's actually going to come down when we backfill the position Bob was in, because it's not going to be filled at the same salary. So I think overall it's going to balance out. But right now for the budget, it is higher because Bob's original salary is still in here because that was new and hasn't been adjusted yet.
Judy Braca again. So is it a fair statement to say that the proposed budget for 2026 really doesn't include much discretionary cost increase, that it is mandated either by the costs that Tyler has imposed on their software licensing, and that little bit, as you explained about their personnel, but it seems like everything else is pretty much static. Is that accurate?
Axon was new, which added software features and I believe additional licensing. But the net difference is less than $100,000. And if the changes happen where we hire back Bob's position at 75% of the rate, which is what our HR is telling us we need to do, then we obviously will be probably closer to like $50,000 within the budget of last year. It'll be very close.
Okay.
So it's not a lot of difference.
Anything else on the expense side that you want to go over?
No, I think we're
Now,
covered those.
Roger, can you just please review for the commission members what the funding sources are and the division? Our
Sure.
funding source is the RTA taxes.
Yes.
And that is determined by ordinance, that split. And
Yes.
so the split is 15% for public safety, for which this is 6% of that
Yes.
15% is for the judicial technology. The
Oh.
other 9% actually goes to public safety management, which I think is probably the sheriff, if I'm not mistaken.
It's the sheriff and then it's similar to the 127. We do all their software. So they buy their Tyler software for that. And I believe we have inclusive of 911.
Okay. And then the rest of the RTA sales tax, in case you're interested, 82% goes to road projects and 3% goes into the contingency fund. And that brings us
that's
to
true.
100%. So 15% for public safety, which is split 6% for this, and then the rest for sheriff, or yeah, I shouldn't say just sheriff, but public
Yeah.
safety issues. And this funding, this split is old. This goes back to the Siler litigation settlement, really.
This started in 2007 when we were putting the adult corrections facility together for the sheriff.
Yeah.
They started collecting it in 2007 and started using it about the time the facility went live.
Right.
I think we collected the money for almost a year before we started using it.
So you had, the original email for the budget information
Yes.
included a balance sheet, a
Yes.
revenue ledger summary. That goes to the revenue sources then, correct?
Yes, so if I may, the balance sheet is included. There's a balance in there. It's got let's see, I'm trying to find the right line item. I'm sorry. Let's see, fund revenue. Fund equity is 1,125,428. And you have to keep in mind, we draw revenue monthly for this. So the pages following that in the stapled copy on page 9, you'll see the balance sheet. And you'll see fund equity. And then if you go to page 10, I figured you'd want to see maybe the deposits over time. So I started back in December of 2022, which would have been fiscal year 23. And you can actually see the deposits by month for what was deposited into the account, and then has the investment income. We even get interest on the $1 million, but it shows you kind of the month over month. And then if you look at page 11 in the bottom right-hand corner, page 11, let's see, that's 2023 to 2024. And then 2025, there's a lot of information, I think, from the 2020, oh no, 2025 is on, it's actually backwards, I'm sorry. Trying to read my own report. Bottom of page 10 is where 2025 revenue starts coming in. You'll see the numbers at the bottom. So we're pulling, 139, 149,000, 121, and it stops in June. It runs about a month or two behind. But that's the revenue month over month. And then the interest. So it gives you an idea of your cash flow. And I don't know if Kathy from finance is going to adjust the revenue from sales tax for this. Right now, it's flat. We're not projecting as far as I know, but I think she is looking at whether or not that can be adjusted for sales tax increase if there's more revenue based on the volume of sales. But if you look at the revenue, which is on page 13, you'll see the sales tax RTA revenue, investment income, and then last we have fund balance utilization for the year. So those are how we're using the fund balance and how we bring in revenue. So right now our revenue stream from RTA sales tax is 1,612,647, and we do use some of the fund balance to take care of some of the expenses.
Any questions for Roger about anything on the budget? Okay. I'm going to then, anything else that you need to add?
No, I would say that, if the revenue doesn't, increase and we are looking at the next 5 years of budget, there will come a time when you're gonna, if you don't see an increase in sales tax, so you have, no increase in revenue and expenses. Tyler, how much did Tyler go up this year, Charles?
Tyler is currently projected to go up about 5% a year until we get to 2030, when they're not going to allow us to have an on-prem version of their software. And at that point, our software the cost will essentially double for them to host the system. So we need to start looking at that in the next 2 years, just to prepare for that transition as they finish doing this new upgrade.
So it might be changing how we distribute, resources and support, how we pay for, whether it's the people or other software, but trying to get to where we can support the hosted solution. I think one of our fears is that the hosted solution, while it may alleviate some costs for our infrastructure, it may alleviate some system administration. It doesn't change the intellectual knowledge of how our systems are set up and integrated. And it won't replace the people that we have that know how our stuff works. It's going to be this support of the system and operating system and the software, but how we use the software and integrate with it, things like what we do with Echo and what we do with other software, is not a part of that. So we still have to have people to support all those integrations. It's not going to go away with them hosting the hardware. And that's probably where the overlap is. You just because they're taking I think we were discussing it earlier, infrastructure costs of what we do. I would say that the Tyler systems for court are less than 10% of what the county maintains for hardware right now. So the burden on our infrastructure is about less than 10% of what we have. It doesn't change what we do by much as far as the physical infrastructure, but the people are what make everything work. So they would take that burden, which is a little bit of a burden off of us for the infrastructure, but I don't see the people costs changing much. We still need all the solutions people, the integration people, the data, the analysts, the people that help us use the applications. And that's where kind of I see the expenses being a concern, and that'll be 3 years. Within 3 years, we have to start to have a really good plan for that.
When is that change coming with Tyler?
So Tyler is releasing a final 2025 version. That'll be the last version that counties can host. And then they're going to spend the next 3 to 5 years building a new product. So they're telling us right now 2030 is when they're anticipating it, but it could be a little earlier, it could be a little later. It depends how they go, but we're planning to look at that in 2028 to 2029. We need to be prepared, because it's not going to be something you just do overnight. It's going to be
And-
probably a 6 months transition, testing, getting.
I would even volunteer that if we can avoid being an early adopter, we probably will. So,
Right.
We won't necessarily want to go first, but you also want to take advantage of the services when they're doing conversions and moving people. You don't want to go last.
Right.
But at the same time, I think because of our integrations with Echo and other things, we need to be careful about how fast you move.
Right. We don't want to be first. We don't want to be last, but
Yeah.
based on experience, I can tell you that the financing of this is a whole different issue from the physical changes. And, looking at 2028, 2029 for a change that possibly may happen in 2030, actually, I'm not sure that's enough time. I'm sort of thinking that that's going to have to be a question that's actually addressed closer to 2027. To find out where are we going to get the money for this? Because I imagine if they're not going to be
Yeah.
supporting, because if my understanding then is you're saying that they're not going to be supporting the version of what we're doing starting in 2030, give or take a year or two, right?
I would say that for Tyler, a 5-year plan to do what they're talking about is really ambitious. They just have a lot of customers with a lot of different uses. And so while changing the main platform might be reasonable for them to do, changing all their customers that have custom integrations and changes it will be a very, very difficult process. It will be a lot of work for every customer they have that has these kind of one-off customizations.
Right. Madam Clerk,
This is what we were talking about last year at this time, Charles and I. And we brought it forward so everyone would have an idea of what we're looking at going forward. And the rate, the county, what's been going on with the county and that, I think they need to talk about it as soon as possible rather than waiting. You know what I'm saying? Because this is a huge undertaking. And we don't want to be sitting back without their support. I mean, granted, we sometimes feel like we're sitting without much support, but we still have their support. And my fear is that the board will put this off going forward and not think about it until, till it happens.
We have a parallel problem, which we're looking at right now, which is the Microsoft licensing in Office 365. We'd like to move that to a different solution too, and it has a cost associated with it. So that's another one that we're kind of running in parallel. We need to do it. We need to do it fairly soon, and it does have a cost. So unfortunately, software is changing. It is no longer a capital asset that you just buy it and own it. It's a service. You're paying for recurring costs, recurring revenue for the companies that sell it, and they don't want to sell you a wholesale product that you own and just can own it as an asset and hold it. They want you to buy a service that you pay a recurring fee to. So that's where they're all headed. And
since
yeah, I think the word they used was evergreen.
Mhm,
yeah, yeah,
It'll be evergreen for them, I think.
yeah, a salesperson's way of
Yeah,
sugarcoating planned obsolescence.
they like words like that, like alliance.
Yeah.
Evergreen.
Well, some of us will be aged out of the system by the time this is coming up. And, speaking for myself, when I say some of us, but I certainly don't want this to come as a surprise. And I certainly want people to be aware of this and to have this planned because, this has been an investment of millions and millions of dollars. And we cannot, I mean, there is no going back on a case management system now. We can't say, okay, tomorrow we're going to go back to paper. That's not happening. That's never, there's no going back on this. And we've learned the lesson of what happens when we don't keep up an electronic case management system. It was a disaster.
Yes.
And so, better, everybody knows in the long range, there should really be a long range plan on this. That everyone is aware of and executed. And then we start to look at what other, do we have to change the funding sources? Do we have to go someplace else? We're pretty much for sure now that it's probably not, we're not going to get any money from the federal government.
If I may, it's probably been 5 years ago. We sat down with Tyler at a meeting and tried to do the roadmap for the version control. How often do we upgrade? How often do we, and we were trying to get them on a schedule of nothing sooner than every 2 years. And I think it would be good for us to try to get our support services people that work for us through Tyler to give us another roadmap where they map this out and say, you're going to go to 2025 and this year, this is going to be a period of development for them. So, you know, it's great to try to plan what would happen for something they're developing between 2025 and 2029. I'm going to tell you that you probably won't know a lot about it until closer to the end of that period. And I even would say that some of the stuff that they've provided us in dollars probably will move. It'll be fluid because they're going to start to understand their true costs of doing this. And it may not be what they think it is. And I can probably guarantee you they will not just pay. They will want us to pick up whatever that net difference is. So anyway, I think that's something that we can work on is a roadmap. And that's something that our customer success manager and them should be able to put together for us. What year do you see this happening? Resource allocation, the version controls. You know, you look at a 2030 type of time frame. If you thought that it would be ready by 2030, our evaluation and testing process, months, 6 months to a year, maybe, to evaluate and get all of our interfaces, because we won't have time to develop what we do with Echo and other things until they're done. And then we would put their product into test and start testing our stuff. And then we obviously would have to make modifications to make our stuff work too. So it even if it was ready in 2030, maybe 2031, 2032, those are the types of things you're looking at. No?
Well, it's the funding that I'm worried about.
Well,
You know, I understand the gradual nature of it, but I'm worried about being more prepared for the funding source because
sure.
2 years to plan for a multi-million-dollar expenditure isn't going to cut it. Not going to work.
I think the hosting cost was more in the line of an additional 600,000-700,000, something like that. It wasn't as steep as maybe some of them.
I can't, can you,
I sound like a board member,
Yeah.
leaning back, talking. You mean if you take the personnel on that? Yeah, it was
If you
more,
realign
yeah,
stuff.
if you realign it, yes, I agree with you. It'd be about
Yeah.
700,000. I wouldn't say anything under.
Charles has like now again, this is so initial. They don't even have the software. So talking about how much it costs is kind of irrelevant, but they actually gave us numbers. So Charles can share some of that.
Yeah, right now they're projecting a net increase. So our current costs would go up on their software side by $545,000 the first year. So, and then after that, it would actually be a little less because there's integration costs that first year of 100,000. So after that, you're looking at a $477,000 increase, and then you see their 5% each year. So by the time you get out 5 years, you're at about $600,000 increase in what you're paying over what we're paying now.
that's a 30% budget increase. And so that's still an issue to find a 30% increase in a revenue source to pay for this.
Yes.
Because there is not a savings account that we can go to on this, that at that time is going to be available to us.
Yeah, you have to plan a little bit ahead, but I think you got about 5-6 years.
Perhaps a better formulated plan for a regional sales tax to help judicial public safety will be retooled in the future, I think. It's the only way it's going to really bring in the kind of money that's necessary to continue to support what we can't control, which is the evergreen costs of companies that we've become interdependent, relied upon. That's what I think.
Well, that may be, that may be a possible answer, but I'm not sure what we're going to be able to do to trigger that. You know, that is going to have to come from, I would think, the legislative branch somewhere. You know, any other questions relating to the budget, expenses or income?
Just one of the things I wanted to explain was that the budget itself, In the early establishment of the ordinance, it was conceived that this would be voted on and recommended by this body to go to the full county board. And in the past, it's happened kind of late in the game, and we're trying to get approval of the budget that's presented. And I don't know if you want to do that today or at a later time, but the sooner we get that approval done, that's one more thing that's off of our list to do. I don't know if that's today. I don't think we have it on here to do a actual vote on it.
I think that the budget report on new business would cover that.
Okay. And then the only thing that would be left would be to go through finance exec and full county board. But the requirement was to get a recommendation from this body to approve of the recommendation of the budget. And it doesn't really discuss, kind of the fine tuning and adjustments. It's a recommendation to the board, and then the board takes it and approves it.
Right.
So-
Obviously, it's always up to the board, the final legislative body. We only can make recommendations. And the reason that this would be an opportune time is because in this particular budget year, my understanding is that right now, there's a question of everyone's budget coming, there's always budget discussions, but my understanding is that there's some significant issues relating to each individual department's budgets and how they're going to be worked and how it is going to be moving forward. And this is one of those situations. I know that the county goes through what are mandates that different departments must meet, things that are mandated by the legislative branch or by the federal government that they don't give us money for, that we have to find our own tax money to pay for, because obviously that's where it comes from. It's from the taxpayers. But I think that it's important to let the county know in their budget process that what is related to case management, as I said, it's very little discretionary issues here. This is basically a flat budget, but for 26,000 in the personnel, which is a minor increase in terms of the whole budget, and 5% from
overall.
software. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't cut that. We can't stop updating the software. We can't stop the licensing. We can't stop this train on the track. And so that's why I think it's appropriate for us to make this early recommendation so that when they're doing everybody else's budgets, they know what they have to have for this budget. And hopefully they would accept the recommendations. And so, yes, if you could please identify.
Yeah, this is Bill Roth. I'm on the county board. A question, this is 100% coming from the RTA sales tax, right? It's not coming from general funds, correct? Yeah, so that shouldn't be an issue. And we're covering 100% of the costs, right? Or the budget with that. We're not having to get funds from anywhere else.
That's my understanding.
I just wanted to confirm, because that's going to be the big question from the board. And basically, it's a no-brainer. This is revenue dedicated for this purpose, and you have enough to cover. Now, the question you brought up, as we go forward, we may start having shortfalls.
Yeah, there's
But like you
nothing-
said, you'll be retired by then.
There's nothing coming out of the general fund budget.
Right.
Related
I
to
just
this
wanted to
budget
confirm that,
request.
because that'll be the big question from the board.
Well,
And so
knowing
I see it
though-
as a non-issue.
knowing though how they work out the public safety sales tax fund portion of it, the other 9% of it,
Right.
and what that will cover of operating costs for other, if and whether it covers
Right.
anything for any other department
Right.
that may
Well-
impact on their general fund.
Right.
We're not asking for general fund monies.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. So it shouldn't be an
Yeah.
issue on passing this.
Right.
And I'm not aware at this point that the board is looking to take away money from the public safety percentages at all.
Well,
Now, they
that's-
are looking at transportation, and that's a big question whether that'll happen or not.
Right. Well, that's an important thing to make sure
That's
that,
why I wanted to state that.
thank you.
And
So,
Ms. Molino can confirm that, make sure.
hearing no other questions, I'm going to call the question to the vote. Is there a motion to approve the budget year 2026 budget as presented today? Moved by Villa. Is there a second? Second by Barrero. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll for voting?
Barrero. Conan,
Yes.
Belton,
Yes.
Villa,
That's,
Molina. I'm sorry, Molina,
Yes.
Mosser. Oh, sorry. Ballers,
yes.
Keel, Braca.
Yes. Yes. Passes. Thank you. Let's jump back up then to the approval of minutes, October 10th of 2024. Did everyone receive a copy of the minutes? I think you should have received an email on it. Are there any corrections?
Madam Chair, only on who is present, we have, it's like, oh, they have him as absent. One of the others that at the top of the meeting minutes, it lists Cruz, Judge Cruz, and he's formally off the committee. I don't know if that matters.
Well, back then, I think it was indicated that he and David were no longer on.
Okay.
Correct. So other than that, any other corrections? All right. Is there a motion to then approve the minutes?
So moved.
Villa moved. Is there a second? Barrero, second. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Conan,
Yes.
Belton,
Yes.
Villa,
Yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Ballers,
Abstain.
Keel, Braca.
Yes.
Passes.
Dropping back down, I know it's confusing. Item 8, new business on the agenda. B, there needs to be a chairperson elected at the next meeting. I am more than happy to encourage anybody who would like to do this to step forward. And you have obviously time to think about this. But that is when my term ends. My current term of 2 years will end at that meeting. And actually, let me rephrase that. The term of the new chairperson begins at the first meeting after the vote is actually held. So I know that that's the way the ordinance reads. But the election has to take place at our October 9th meeting. Okay. So fair news to everybody about that. This will be passed then until that time for that election. And so think about that if you want to step forward, if you want to do something, if you want to, who you want to nominate, what you want to do. I thought you should be aware of it now. Okay. Going down to old business on the ordinance and restating and amending the ordinances. A number of years ago, this commission was expanded to not only do the case management system, but also to give it, to investigate and make recommendations to the county about buildings on the judicial campus. In looking at what has transpired since then and how it has worked out in terms of the presentations and the expertise and background of the individuals on the board and how it's been filled, it really makes more sense to confine this commission to its original and its original ordinance creations. But that has to be done, and that ordinance has to be reviewed through the state's attorney's office, and they have to assign someone from their civil division to do that. I've done a draft and can certainly make recommendations to them how to do that. I'm not sure it'll change the size of who should fill the vacancies because of the Open Meetings Act requirements. And because there's something called justice managers that meets, which is the justice managers in the criminal justice system, chief judge, circuit clerk, state's attorney, public defender, and sheriff. That's 5. Open Meetings Act would require that for this commission, you cannot have a meeting of, the quorum for this commission will officially have to be at least 9, so that it's not a majority of a quorum meeting to discuss their issues, which may overlap. So that means that it has to be a commission that's actually 19 members, okay? Because then the majority on the 19 members will be 10. 5 is not a majority of the 10 on the quorum. So state's attorney, though, has to be involved in this. And so although it's old business, and I sent an email to Ms. Masser asking her to please assign a civil division state's attorney to this task. There's other changes we'd like to make too. One involving, or I'd like to recommend to the commission, one involving the appointment of the representative from the Kane County Bar Association. The Kane County Bar Association has requested that their current vice president actually be like ex officio, that whoever is their current vice president will be the person that is going to be the representative to the commission, which makes a lot of sense. We do it for other ex officio slots. And so it makes sense to do it on that one too. Otherwise, it is a constant burden on the chief judge and the chair of the county board to vet and nominate that particular individual from the bar once the bar nominates them. And so, there's a good way to get around that, but it has to be vetted through the state's attorney first.
I have a question for the chair. With respect to the quorum issue you were concerned about with justice managers having a number of 5, wouldn't the only relevance of that for an objection from somebody saying that that was a meeting of 5 outside of the Open Meetings Act
Correct.
matter if we discuss the matters that this particular committee is tasked with addressing?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
I never set an agenda point that talked about anything that this commission talks about for the justice managers. Would it matter that the 5 got together?
I will not say that I'm an expert in the case law relating to Open Meetings Act violations, but having to defend a violation on the Open Meeting Act already puts everyone at a disadvantage.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I follow the rule that if you're explaining, you're losing.
Right.
But if asked, those 5 are not meeting for any purpose related to this particular commission. If they're talking about how the public defender and the sheriff's department are going to transport defendants from other counties when there's too much space. So if there were no agenda items that related to anything that this commission talks.
Right. That's right. Your justice managers meetings are not an automatic violation. It's only if and when you possibly discuss case management issues.
Correct.
And so in order to avoid that possibility, that's why the commission has to have that. It has to be a quorum of 9.
Fair enough.
So there's a lot of other issues. I actually would like to get an opinion as to whether or not we are obligated to have an in-person quorum. Because I've read and I've reread and I've read again the Open Meeting Act statute. And I cannot figure out where there's no comma in the spot that I'm thinking of, because it would certainly be of assistance if we didn't have to have an in-person quorum to all of the commission members being able to do a remote attendance. Because we are not,
Well, there was the state made the change, was it a year ago, May, to tighten it up where you couldn't do, because during COVID, it could be remote.
Sure.
So the state passed in May of 24, I believe, the change, or was it 23? I know it was May, that requires it in person now. And that's when the county board voted then to follow the state, because we can't differ from the state.
sure,
It was that change that then brought back in person.
but there's a provision, but there is other
And
exceptions.
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to
Right,
claim to
right.
be an expert.
There's other, there's exceptions under the Open Meetings Act as to advisory boards. And whether or not, if it's only an advisory board, which we
Right.
actually are, we are not.
Yeah.
No one has to follow what we do. The county can throw it out.
Yeah. And
And so we're advisory. So there's a question of whether or not
Yeah.
what this commission falls under.
Yeah.
And if it's advisory only, if that has to be only a state advisory board, or if a local advisory board is under that.
Right.
If that falls under that exception, we can meet remotely.
Right.
If it doesn't, then we have to
Right.
have it in
And
person.
we use John Frank for a lot of our legal advice, the civil division.
Mhm.
So, and he's the one that came back and said, here's what we have to do all the time
Right.
to make sure we're following OMA.
Well, that's another matter that I had raised on the email with Ms. Masser, to be able to
Right.
see if they would render that opinion, whether or not we can meet remotely, if this portion of the statute would apply. So. The reports then will be placed on file. You have all of those. Okay, is there a motion and a motion for the reports that were submitted today on the budget to be placed on file? Ms. Barrero moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Felton. Call the roll, please, for the vote.
Barrero. Conant,
Yes.
Felton,
Yes.
Villa,
Yes.
Molina,
Yes.
Wallers,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
Braca.
Yes. Motion passes. They're placed on file. No need for an executive session. And that concluding the matter, although Robert's rules of order seem to indicate that when you've concluded your agenda, that it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a motion to adjourn. Someone asked last time if we could do a motion to adjourn, which I have no problem doing. I'll call for the motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Villa, second.
Second.
Second by Wallers. All those in favor? Call the roll, please.
Barrero,
Yes.
Conant,
Yes.
Felton,
Yes.
Villa,
Yes.
Molina,
Yes.
Yes.
Keel, Braca.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much for your in-person presence at this time. I'm still going to ask them to determine if we can fall under that exception so that it can be remote meetings. Mr. Keel, thank you for being here as a courtesy, as the bar representative. And hopefully we'll be able to resolve this in an ex officio manner for the next vice president. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.